Across America, there are towns that feel frozen in time, places where the past refuses to stay buried and ghosts still roam the streets. Tonight on The Other Side, we're heading deep into the shadows of America's most haunted towns, where history and horror collide, and some stories are dying to be told. And remember, we're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. Let's get there together. Join me on The Other Side. Jerome, Arizona, the wickedest town in the West. In Arizona, perched on the side of Cleopatra Hill, sits a tiny town that looks like it's been frozen in time. But Jerome, Arizona isn't just some old mining town. It's something much darker. Tourists visit for the scenic views and quirky shops, but the locals know something they don't. They say that after sunset, something sinister awakens here. And if you step into the wrong building, or worse, the old tunnels below the town, you might not make it back out. And that's not even the scariest part. Jerome was once known as the richest and rowdiest mining town in Arizona. In the late 1800s, it was known as the wickedest town in the West. Copper was everywhere. The mines pulled in thousands and thousands of workers, saloons lined every street, and the violence that was there was just a regular part of daily life. Shootouts, mining accidents, and sudden cave-ins were very common. And many of those who died, well, their bodies were never recovered. When the mining boom ended, Jerome was nearly abandoned, but something stayed behind. And today people say that the ghost of those miners, and something far older, still roam the streets. Let's start with the most infamous place in town, the Jerome Grand Hotel. Originally built in 1926 as United Verde Hospital, this building has seen some things. Patients who entered with severe injuries, many from horrific mining accidents, often didn't leave. One of the most famous spirits here is known as Claude Harvey, the maintenance man who died under mysterious circumstances in the basement. He was found crushed beneath the hotel's elevator, though many believe he didn't fall by accident. To this day, guests report seeing ghostly miners wandering the halls. People hear coughing, moaning, and even footsteps trailing them in the empty corridors. And perhaps the most terrifying, that same old elevator where they found Claude's body, it still operates. But according to staff, it often moves between floors on its own, usually late at night. A few blocks away, there is a cozy little spot called the Haunted Hamburger. This restaurant looks charming, but its history is anything but. Before it became a restaurant, the building sat abandoned for decades. Neighbors constantly reported strange lights in the windows and loud banging on the inside, despite it being empty. During renovations, workers claimed their tools would disappear, only to show up locked inside rooms they didn't even have keys to. Today, diners report seeing silverware slide across tables, chairs moving on their own, and hearing disembodied laughter, usually when they're there alone. But the creepiest stories of Jerome, well, they come from below. The old mining tunnels still snake beneath the town. Dark, twisting passageways where miners once worked in brutal conditions. Locals say the tunnels are cursed. People report seeing shadowy figures darting just beyond the light, hearing voices whisper and calling them deeper inside the mines. Some say they've even seen a ghost known as Headless Charlie, a miner who supposedly died in a grisly accident where he was decapitated by a falling rock. They say he wanders the tunnels, carrying a lantern in one hand and his severed head in the other. One story comes from a man named Tony who grew up in Jerome. He and his friends would sneak into the tunnels as kids. One night they brought flashlights and dared each other to go deeper than anybody that they knew ever had. About 20 minutes in, their lights started to flicker. Suddenly, they heard footsteps behind them. heavy boots stomping slowly in the dirt. When they turned around, their flashlights went completely dead. In the pitch black, they heard a man's voice say, "Get out." Terrified, they ran back toward the entrance, but as they fled, Tony swears he saw a figure standing in the tunnel's mouth, holding a lantern and what looked like a head. They never went back to the tunnels. Jerome may be a quirky tourist stop today, but when the sun goes down, the wickedest town in the West surely lives up to its name. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. In the quiet hills of Pennsylvania, there's a place where time doesn't work the way it should, where the same horrific battle seems to play out again and again and again. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania is home to the bloodiest battle ever fought on America's soil. It is considered the most haunted battlefield in America. People here don't just talk about ghost stories, they live them. And some visitors, they don't just leave with memories. In July of 1863, over 160,000 soldiers clashed here in a brutal 3-day battle that would change the course of the Civil War. When the smoke cleared, over 50,000 men were dead, wounded, or missing. The fields were so covered in bodies, locals described them as looking like harvest of death. For months after, townspeople struggled to bury the dead fast enough to stop disease. Many soldiers were left where they fell, and some say they never left at all. Today, the entire town of Gettysburg seems trapped between the past and the present, and the hauntings here, they're not too subtle. Most visitors start at the Gettysburg battlefield itself. During the day, it's quiet, peaceful even, but at night, everything changes. Countless people have reported hearing phantom cannon blast and the crack of musket fire echoing through the hills. But it's not just the sounds. Multiple visitors have reported seeing full apparitions of soldiers, sometimes standing silently among the monuments, or even marching in formation before vanishing just out of view. One of the most famous locations is the Devil's Den, a rocky outcropping where fierce fighting took place. And there's a story here about ghostly photographers. Visitors claim that strange men, dressed in outdated clothes with old-fashioned cameras, have approached them at Devil's Den, offering to take their photo. But when the photos come out, there's nobody else in the frame. Even creepier, some visitors claim that these men simply vanished in front of them after their interactions, leaving only the photos behind. About a mile from the battlefield stands Sachs-covered bridge. It looks like an ordinary bridge, but this place has a chilling history. During the Civil War, it was used as a makeshift execution site. 3 Confederate soldiers, accused of being spies, were allegedly hung from its wooden beams. Today, people report seeing shadowy figures crossing the bridge after dark. Some say they even feel icy hands grab their arms as they walk through. Others have reported hearing heavy boots stomping across the bridge, but when they turn around, nobody is there. There is one famous photo on the bridge that shows a clear silhouette of a man in uniform standing inside the bridge, despite nobody being there at the time. Then there's the Farnsworth House Inn, which might be the most haunted building in the town. During the Battle of Gettysburg, Confederate sharpshooters fired from its attic, and the bullet holes still scar the walls outside. But inside, it's a different kind of scar. Guests staying in certain rooms, especially the Sarah Black room, report extreme paranormal encounters. They describe waking up to the sensation of somebody sitting on their bed, only to open their eyes and see a man in a Confederate uniform staring at them. Others have reported hearing weeping, footsteps in empty hallways, and the sound of children laughing, despite no kids being present at the time. Staff say the attic where the sharpshooters were once perched is so haunted that most people refuse to go up there alone. Perhaps the most unsettling things about Gettysburg isn't what people see, but what they hear. Over the years, countless visitors have captured ghostly recordings on the battlefield. Voices pleading for help, shouts of officers yelling orders, and even the sounds of horses galloping. One paranormal investigator claims to have recorded a soldier's dying breath saying, "Help me, I'm dying." Many believe Gettysburg acts like a giant spiritual battery. Its violent history has charged the land itself. There's a common belief among locals that the battle never really ended here. It just keeps replaying over and over again in some sort of twisted loop. And if you're not careful, you might find yourself stuck in it too. Gettysburg may look like a quiet small town, but underneath the surface, the war never stopped. Eureka Springs, Arkansas. America's most haunted spa town. In the hills of Arkansas, there's a town that looks like it came straight out of a fairy tale. Beautiful old Victorian buildings, winding streets, and natural springs said to have healing powers. But beneath its charming surface, Eureka Springs has a very dark secret. Some say this town was never meant to be a place of healing. In fact, some of its most famous buildings, where people once went to get better, are now known for something else entirely. Ghost. In the late 1800s, Eureka Springs exploded in popularity as a spa town. People traveled from all over the country, hoping that the famous town spring would heal everything from arthritis to cancer. The streets filled with grand hotels, bathhouses, and saloons. But with all that money and desperation flooding in, it didn't take long for shady characters to take advantage of it. Behind the fancy facades, there were rumors of scams, secret experiments, and people going missing. And some of the victims, people believe they never left Eureka Springs. The most infamous building in Eureka Springs is the Crescent Hotel, widely considered to be America's most haunted hotel. It opened in 1886 as a luxurious resort, but from the beginning, things were very strange. One of the most famous ghosts here is a man named Michael, a stonemason who fell to his death during construction. Guests staying in room 218, where he's said to linger, report seeing a shadowy figure in the bathroom mirror, hearing footsteps in the ceiling, and even having objects thrown across the room. But Michael isn't the only spirit trapped here. In the 1930s, a man named Norman Baker, a con artist who dressed in flashy white suits, bought the building and turned it into the Baker Cancer Hospital. He promised miracle cures to desperate patients, but in reality, he wasn't a doctor at all. Many of the patients he treated died horrible deaths under his so-called care. It's said that the basement of the hotel where Baker performed his treatments is still filled with some strange energies. People report hearing screams, seeing ghostly figures in hospital gowns, and feeling sudden cold spots, especially near the old morgue where Baker stored his plethora of bodies. One paranormal investigator described the hotel as alive with spirits, and many other people agree. Just down the hill sits another haunted hotspot, the Basin Park Hotel. This hotel was once the rowdiest spot in town, filled with gamblers, outlaws, and bootleggers during the Prohibition era. Today, guests report hearing old-time piano music playing late at night, long after the bar's tabs have closed. Others have seen full-body apparitions dressed in Victorian-era clothing walking in the hallways. There are also reports of disembodied laughter, glasses sliding off tables, and doors locking themselves from the inside. Staff members refuse to go into certain parts of the hotel alone, especially on the third floor, where shadowy figures are often seen lingering in the doorways. But the darkest stories always seem to circle back to Norman Baker. Locals say many of his patients who died under his care at the Crescent Hotel never moved on. Guests have reported waking up seeing ghostly nurses standing over them, or hearing the soft cries of women begging for help in the middle of the night. Even more disturbing, during a renovation in 2019, workers discovered a hidden room in the basement that contained hundreds of glass jars, filled with what appeared to be preserved human organs and tumors, believed to be remnants of Baker's gruesome experiments on his guest. The jars were sent off for testing, but the spirits that linger in the hotel, they stayed right where they were. Eureka Springs may have been built on the promise of healing, but the deeper you go, the more you realize some wounds in this town never healed at all. Salem, Massachusetts, the town cursed by its own dark past. They call it the Witch City, a small coastal town in Massachusetts where history has a way of pulling people back in. Salem is famous for its connection to the 1692 witch trials. But what most visitors don't realize is that many of the accused didn't just vanish after they were executed. Some believe they never left Salem. And if you walk certain streets after dark, you may come face to face with them. In 1692, Salem erupted into mass hysteria. Over just a few months, more than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft. Neighbors turned on neighbors, and the courts handed down death sentences with terrifying speeds. 20 people were executed, most by hanging, but one man was crushed to death by stones. The trials eventually ended, but the stain they left on Salem never fully faded. Many believe the intense fear, grief, and suffering of those days left a permanent scar on the town, one that still shows itself through unexplained phenomenon. One of the most haunted places in Salem is simply known as the Witch House. It is the only surviving structure with direct ties to the witch trials. It was once the home of Judge Jonathan Corwin, one of the magistrates who sentenced people to death. From the outside, it looks like something out of a nightmare. Dark wood, jagged angles, and looming windows that seem to watch you as you walk by. Inside, people report seeing shadowy figures moving through the rooms, hearing whispers when no one else is there, and feeling sudden waves of dread as they move through the house. Some people say they've seen a pale woman standing by the fireplace, silently weeping, believed to be the spirit of an accused witch who once pleaded for her life in front of Judge Corwin. Then there's the Hawthorne Hotel, one of Salem's most famous landmarks, and possibly its most haunted. Built near sites tied to the trials, the hotel has been long associated with strange activity. Guests report flickering lights, cold spots, and a feeling of being watched. But the most unsettling encounters happen in room 325 and room 612. People staying in these rooms report seeing ghostly figures at the foot of their bed, hearing disembodied voices, and even waking up to the sensation of invisible hands pressing down on their chest, almost as if they were being punished for being there. Some believe the spirits here are directly tied to the lingering pain from the trials, forever trapped in the cycle of grief and anger and reaching out in frustration. But the heart of Salem's darkness may lie just down the street at the Old Berrien Point Cemetery, one of the oldest cemeteries in the United States, dating back to the 1600s. Many of the town's earliest residents are buried here, including Judge John Hawthorne, another magistrate from the trials. Locals say that this place is alive with energy. Visitors frequently report seeing shadowy forms moving between the gravestones, hearing whispered prayers in the wind, and just being overcome with a sense of sadness and dread whenever they walk through the cemetery. Some even claim to have seen spirits of the accused witches themselves, women in old-fashioned clothing, silently watching them from the shadows. But perhaps the most chilling thing about Salem isn't just the ghost people see. It's the energy that lingers in the city. Many of the people believe the town is trapped under the weight of its past, caught in a never-ending loop of hysteria and grief. Even skeptics admit that there's something heavy about Salem after dark, something you can't quite explain. Whether it's the spirits of the accused or the echoes of a community consumed by fear, one thing is for certain: some wounds in Salem never properly healed. And if you're not careful, you might carry a piece of the darkness home with you. Salem may have moved on, but some of its former residents never did. St. Augustine, Florida, the oldest city in America. In Florida, there's a city that looks like it was pulled straight out of a history book. Cobblestone streets, ancient forts, and century-old buildings. But St. Augustine isn't just the oldest city in America, it's also one of the most haunted. And here, the past doesn't linger, it fights to be seen. And the spirits trapped here, they don't care if you believe in them or not. Founded in 1565 by the Spanish, St. Augustine is older than Jamestown and older than Plymouth Rock. For centuries, it was a hotbed of war, piracy, disease, and tragedy. Battles were fought here, plagues ripped through the streets, and countless lives were lost. According to the locals, many of those souls are still here, playing out their final moments again and again. Paranormal investigators, including Zach Bagans, have called it one of the most active cities in America, and once you hear these stories, you'll understand why. One of the most terrifying places in town is the St. Augustine Lighthouse. From the outside, it's beautiful, rising high above the coastline, but inside, it's a different story. In the late 1800s, during construction of the lighthouse, several children, daughters of a lighthouse keeper, were playing on a supply cart used to carry materials. The cart broke loose and the girls were thrown into the water, where they tragically drowned. Ever since then, visitors and staff have reported seeing small figures at the top of the lighthouse stairs, and even hearing little girls laughing when nobody's around. Some people have even seen handprints on the glass where no one could have reached. One paranormal investigator claims to have even captured audio of a little girl's voice saying, "Help me." Just down the road stands one of the oldest forts in America, Castillo de San Marcos. Built in the 1600s, the stone fortress has seen centuries of war, sieges, and its fair amount of suffering. The walls themselves are made of a soft shell stone that's said to absorb energy. But according to many, the fort absorbs something much darker. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly soldiers pacing along the ramparts, muskets slung over their shoulders, staring down at them before vanishing into thin air. Some say that they've heard the distant boom of cannons when no reenactments were happening. And one of the most infamous legends to this day involves two lovers who were secretly imprisoned and left to die inside the fort. Today, people report hearing moaning and catching the scent of perfume in the locked rooms. But maybe the most unsettling place in St. Augustine is Huguenot Cemetery. It was established in the early 1800s as a burial ground for victims of a massive yellow fever outbreak. Most of the people buried here died terrified, isolated from their families. Locals say that their restless spirits are still trapped here. People report seeing shadowy figures walking among the gravestones, hearing disembodied coughing and weeping, and feeling sudden cold spots, even in the middle of Florida's intense swamp-ass sweat-causing summer heat. Some have even captured photos of glowing orbs above the graves. And then there's the legend of the Judge, a spirit said to stalk visitors, glaring at them from just beyond the gates of Huguenot Cemetery, only to disappear when approached. St. Augustine is a magnet for paranormal investigators, and many have left with chilling evidence. One team captured what sounded like a full-on battle echoing through the streets, musket fire, men screaming, and the clash of swords. Others have even caught crystal clear EVPs of voices saying something like, "Get back" or "Get out." But perhaps the most unsettling thing isn't what investigators record, it's the feeling that almost every visitor in the area has, that someone is following them. Locals say that in St. Augustine, it doesn't matter who you are or where you go. Once you step foot inside the city walls, something starts watching you. And if you listen closely, you might hear it whispering your name. In St. Augustine, the ghosts don't hide in the shadows. They walk right alongside you. Bardstown, Kentucky, the most beautiful town in Kentucky, hides some shocking secrets. Bourbon, bluegrass, small town charm, that is what most people think when they hear of Bardstown, Kentucky, and I personally love it because it's right down the street from me. But beneath the rolling hills and old brick buildings lie a much darker story. Because this picture-perfect town isn't just known for whiskey, it's also famous for something else. Murder, mystery, and some of the most chilling hauntings in America. Bardstown calls itself the bourbon capital of the world, and it's a place where locals pride themselves on tradition, whiskey making, bluegrass music, and southern hospitality. But throughout its history, Bardstown has been no stranger to violence. From old frontier gunfights to modern unsolved murders, this town has a long-running reputation for secrets hiding behind every friendly smile. And according to the locals, those secrets have a way of sticking around. The most famous haunt in Bardstown is the Talbot Tavern, often called the oldest western stagecoach stop in America. Built in the 1700s, it's hosted everyone from President Abraham Lincoln to outlaw Jesse James. And Jesse James, they say, never left. There's a famous room where Jesse reported staying during one of his visits. Legend says he got drunk one night and became paranoid that somebody was coming for him, so he fired his gun wildly into the walls. To this day, the bullet holes from James's gun are still there. But here's the creepy part. Guests staying in that room reportedly see a ghostly figure of a man dressed like an outlaw standing near the bed or walking through the walls. Others have heard phantom gunshots in the middle of the night, only to find nothing but silence when they investigate. Just down the street is the Jailer's Inn, which, yes, was literally the county jail for nearly 200 years. It's now a bed and breakfast, and many of the old cells remain intact. And according to guests, including my own grandmother who went and spent the night there, the prisoners are still there too. People report hearing the clanking of cell doors, disembodied moaning, and heavy footsteps pacing the hallway. One guest even claimed that they were woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of keys jingling right outside the door. When they opened it, nobody was there, but the cold, unmistakable scent of tobacco smoke filled the air. My grandmother claimed when she was there, something grabbed her pillow and threw it across the room, which woke her up, and when she got up to grab her pillow, she heard a door slam. It's believed that some of the most dangerous criminals in Kentucky history spent their final days here, and some of them never left. Then there's my old Kentucky home, a stately mansion famous for inspiring the song of the same name. But behind its polished exterior is another ghostly story. Visitors and staff alike have reported hearing singing echoing through the halls, usually soft and mournful. One staff member described hearing a woman's voice singing an old folk tune late into the night. When she followed the sound upstairs, it stopped suddenly, but the air was ice cold. Some believe it's the spirit of Madge Rowan Foster, a former resident known for her love of music, but others think it's something much older tied to the land itself. But even creepier than the ghost stories are the real-life mysteries still haunting Bardstown. Since 2013, a series of unsolved murders have shaken this tight-knit community. It started with the ambush shooting of a police officer named Jason Ellis, who was killed while clearing debris off the highway. Then came the brutal murders of Kathy and Samantha Netherland, a mother and daughter who were killed in their home in Bardstown. And in 2015, Crystal Rogers, a young mother of 5, vanished without a trace. Her case is still unsolved, and it's believed it's connected to a wider web of corruption and secrets in Bardstown, which ultimately led to her father being shot while hunting with Crystal's own son. Some locals say the dark energy surrounding these murders isn't new, it's just the latest chapter in a town that always has a dangerous undercurrent. But there's even a theory that Bardstown itself is cursed, a beautiful town doomed to be haunted. Not just by spirits, but by its own history. Bardstown may look like a postcard, but some places aren't as sweet as they seem, because here the bourbon flows freely, but so does blood. And if you're interested in learning more about Bardstown, linked down below is a book on it written by one of my close friends. Bisbee, Arizona, the ghost town that refuses to stay quiet. Tucked away in the mountains of Arizona is a town that feels like it belongs to another era. Once a booming mining town, today it's known for its quirky art galleries, vintage shops, and very colorful streets. But Bisbee has a much darker side, because when the sun sets, this desert town transforms into something else entirely. Locals say the spirits of Bisbee's brutal past still roam the streets, and some visitors check in, and they never leave. Founded in the late 1800s, Bisbee quickly became one of the richest mining towns in the West, thanks to copper, gold, and silver being buried deep beneath its hills. But with fortune came danger. Mining accidents were common, from cave-ins to fires to toxic gas leaks. All of those led to hundreds of miners losing their lives underground. And while the boom eventually faded, something else stayed behind. Today, Bisbee is considered one of the most haunted towns in America, which is why it's in this video. The most famous haunt in town is the Copper Queen Hotel, Arizona's oldest continuously operating hotel. And it's not just the history that keeps people talking. Guests report frequent encounters with a spirit known as Julia. Julia was reported a lady of the night in the early 1900s who lived and died at the hotel under mysterious circumstances, and for my clueless people, she was a prostitute. Some say she took her own life after a forbidden romance went wrong. Others believe something much darker happened to her. Now she's said to haunt room 315 in the Copper Queen Hotel. Guests have reported seeing the figure of a beautiful woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes, smelling faint traces of lavender perfume, and hearing the soft whisper of a woman's voice late at night. Some even claim to have woken up to find Julia herself sitting at the foot of their bed, silently watching them. Then there's the Bisbee Grand Hotel, another historic landmark with a terrifying reputation. Built during the mining boom, it once catered to wealthy investors and traveling performers. But today, its elegant Victorian decor hides something far more unsettling. Guests report hearing footsteps pacing the hallways at all hours of the night, seeing doors open and close on their own, and catching glimpses of shadowy figures in the mirror. One of the most frequently spotted spirits is a man in an old-fashioned bowler hat, who's often seen standing near the bar watching patrons but never speaking to them. Staff members also say certain rooms feel unusually heavy, as if somebody is always standing just out of sight. The creepiest part of Bisbee is the underground mines. Hundreds of men died down there during the mining heyday, and according to locals, many of them never came back up. Paranormal investigators have reported hearing voices echoing through the tunnels, sometimes calling for help, sometimes whispering prayers in the dark. There are even stories of people seeing glowing lights deep in the mine shaft, lights that quickly vanish when approached. One terrifying legend tells of a miner who was trapped during a cave-in. Rescuers say they could hear him singing a haunting tune from behind the collapsed wall for hours. When they reached him, he was already dead, but the singing didn't stop. Today, Bisbee embraces its haunted reputation. Ghost tours are one of the most popular attractions in town, taking visitors through dark alleyways, abandoned buildings, and even down to the old mining tunnels. But many people report leaving these tours with more than just a spooky story. Visitors have claimed to capture strange photos showing orbs or figures, and some claim to feel followed long after the tour ends. Locals say it's because Bisbee isn't just haunted by its past, it is its past, trapped in a loop that keeps playing out over and over again. and if you listen closely, you might just hear it. Bisbee may look like an artsy mountain escape today, but some ghosts here don't care what century it is. They're still on the job, and they're waiting for you to come visit. Galena, Illinois, the town where history refuses to die. There's a town in Illinois that feels like it's been frozen in time. Cobblestone streets, historic mansions, glass lamps glowing at night. It looks like something out of a storybook or a Hallmark movie. But once the sun goes down, Galena reveals its darker side, because here, the past isn't just preserved, it lives with you. And according to locals, the founders of this town are still there with you. Nestled along the banks of the Mississippi River, Galena was once a booming town famous for its lead mines and Civil War heroes. In the mid-1800s, it was one of the wealthiest cities in Illinois and even played host to Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant. But with wealth came tragedy. The town saw fires, flood, disease, and sudden deaths, and many believe its beautiful streets are still haunted by the spirits who lived and died here. The most famous building in town is the DeSoto House Hotel, the oldest operating hotel in Illinois. It's a stunning 5-story brick building that has hosted presidents, generals, and now possibly spirits. Abraham Lincoln gave a speech here from the hotel's balcony, and some guests even claim to have seen his ghost roaming the halls. Others report hearing strange knocks on doors, footsteps in empty halls, and lights flickering on and off by themselves. One common sighting involves a shadowy man in a top hat seen pacing near the ballroom, always vanishing before anybody could get too close. Staff members say some rooms feel off, and guests frequently ask to switch rooms in the middle of the night, complaining of the sensation of being watched. A few blocks away sits the Ryan Mansion, a gorgeous Victorian home built in 1876. It was originally the home of a wealthy local businessman, and some believe he never left it. The current owners, who run the mansion as a bed and breakfast, report frequent encounters with a male spirit in the upstairs hallway. Guests have reported hearing footsteps on the staircase late at night, cold spots in rooms, and even seen the apparition of a woman in period clothing looking out the second-story window. One visitor described waking up and seeing a man standing at the foot of their bed, only for him to slowly disappear right in front of her eyes. But you don't need to stay in a hotel to experience Galena's ghost. Main Street, lined with 19th century buildings, antique shops, and some amazing restaurants, is one of the most haunted stretches in town. Locals and shop owners alike tell stories of unexplained footsteps echoing after hours, objects moving on their own, and strange whispers in empty rooms that would give Bobby Mackey's a run for their money. One shopkeeper once said they saw an old man in a Civil War uniform standing outside their window, only for him to vanish when they stepped outside to confront him. Another reported a recurring customer who really seemed out of place, dressed in old-fashioned clothes and never speaking, just browsing the shelves. When they looked back at security footage, the man wasn't there at all, even though they were speaking to him when he was in the building. Galena is proud of its history. Ghost tours are widely popular, and many visitors come specifically hoping to spot something paranormal. But even skeptics admit there's something strange about this town. Whether it's the preserved buildings, the lingering energy of its Civil War past, or the restless spirits still walking down the street, Galena has earned a reputation as one of America's most haunted small towns. Here, history isn't just remembered, it's relived, and sometimes it's watching you. In Galena, every street tells a story, but not all of them are ready to end. Shepherdstown, West Virginia. There's a tiny, picturesque town in West Virginia that looks like the perfect postcard. From its charming shops to its own stone buildings, it's beautiful. But after dark, that postcard turns into a nightmare. Travel Channel once called Shepherdstown America's most haunted town, and once you hear what happens here, you'll understand why. Because in Shepherdstown, the ghosts aren't just hiding in the shadows, they've become part of the town itself. Founded in the 1700s, Shepherdstown is one of the oldest towns in West Virginia. It survived floods, war, fires, and epidemics. But every time the town was rebuilt, something else seemed to take hold. Locals say it's like the town itself remembers everything that's happened here. And over the years, the strange activity has gotten so extreme it even caught the attention of a paranormal TV series. Shepherdstown quickly became famous worldwide, but some of the town's darkest stories aren't fully explained. One of the most haunted places in town is the Shepherdstown Opera House. Built in the early 1900s, this place has seen generations of performances. Plays, films, concerts, you name it, it's happened here. But according to the locals, the music never really stops. Staff and visitors report hearing phantom piano music echoing through the building when it's empty. People say they've heard footsteps pacing across the stage, curtains rustling, and even ghostly applause coming from the darkened theater. One terrifying account came from a janitor who worked there for years. He claimed that late one night while cleaning the balcony, he heard a man's deep voice singing on stage. When he went downstairs to check, there was no one there. But as he stood in the aisle, the singing started again, but this time, it was right behind him. Just outside of town lies a battlefield dating back to the Civil War. Hundreds of soldiers fought and died here, and locals say their spirits never left. Late at night, people have reported seeing strange glowing lights floating through the trees, almost like lanterns being carried by invisible hands. Others have heard phantom gunshots, shouting, and the sound of drums beating in the distance. There's even a chilling story of a group of hikers who wandered into the woods after dark. They say they suddenly heard the sound of marching feet all around them, and then they saw dozens of shadowy figures moving through the fog, dressed in old Union and Confederate uniforms. The hikers ran back to their car, but later realized they hadn't seen another person on the battlefield all night. Several of Shepherdstown's historic inns have their own terrifying reputations. One inn, which dates back to the 18th century, has been plagued by poltergeist activity for years. Guests have reported waking up to the sound of furniture dragging across the floor above them, but when staff investigate, they find rooms empty. Others say their lights turn on and off by themselves, doors slam without warning, and objects fall off shelves in the middle of the night. One guest described being woken up by the sound of loud knocking on their door, only to open it and find no one there, but the room was suddenly ice cold. Locals say these buildings were once used as makeshift hospitals during the Civil War, and the energy from these tragedies still linger. Shepherdstown has fully embraced its haunted reputation. Ghost tours, paranormal investigations, and of course the TV show Ghost of Shepherdstown have all put this all in the mainstream. But before the camera showed up, the people here knew this wasn't just another spooky town. Many residents believe the spirits here aren't simply stuck, they're drawn to Shepherdstown, as if the land itself is some sort of supernatural magnet. Whether it's the opera house, the battlefields, or the haunted inns, one thing is clear. In Shepherdstown, the ghosts aren't just part of the past, they're part of the town. In America's most haunted town, you don't go looking for ghosts. They find you. New Harmony, Indiana, the utopian town that became a haunted prison. There's a small town in Indiana that was supposed to be a paradise. It was built as a utopian community, free from crime, greed, and suffering. But instead, something else moved in. Today, New Harmony is not known for peace, but for its dark, unsettling energy. Locals say there is something wrong here, and once you hear these stories, you understand why people say the whole town is haunted. In the early 1800s, a group called the Harmonists founded New Harmony as a religious settlement. They believed they were creating a perfect society, dedicated to God, hard work, and complete separation from the outside world. But behind the walls of their utopia, there were rumors of strange rituals and spiritual experiments. Later, the town was sold to a group of visionaries who wanted to build a scientific paradise. But instead of progress, New Harmony fell into decline. And many believe all that focused energy from religion, science to mysticism, left something dark behind. One of the most haunted places in New Harmony is the New Harmony Inn. This was built near the original Harmonist structures, and they believe that's why it's so active. Guests have reported seeing shadowy figures roaming the hallways, hearing footsteps outside their door, and waking up to the feeling of being watched. But one of the most famous ghosts here are known as the monks. Several guests have claimed to see hooded or robed figures silently moving through the building, always vanishing before they can be approached. Some believe these are the spirits of the Harmonist leaders still watching over the town they tried to perfect. Others think it's something entirely different. Then there's the roofless church, a strange open-air structure built in the 1960s as a symbol of universal spirituality. It's supposed to be a place of peace and reflection, but visitors feel it's anything but peaceful. People report seeing shadowy forms moving between the columns, disembodied whispers, and an overwhelming feeling of dread as soon as they step inside. Some say it feels like the town's energy all funnels into this one spot. There are even stories of people blacking out or becoming physically ill while visiting, only to recover as soon as they leave the church grounds. New Harmony is also home to several old cemeteries, some of which date back to the town's earliest settlers. But it's not just the graves that are haunted. Locals tell stories about the spirits of villagers who drowned in the nearby Wabash River during sudden floods. Their apparitions are often seen near the cemeteries, dripping wet and staring blankly as passerby before vanishing. People walking through the graveyards at night report hearing the sound of water dripping even on dry nights, and they catch glimpses of pale, soaking wet figures lingering near the trees. Some believe these spirits are still searching for the homes they lost in the flood, or worse, the loved ones they couldn't save. Many paranormal investigators believe New Harmony isn't just haunted, it's supernaturally charged. Within its history of utopian experiments, religious rituals, and strange architectural sites, the town seems to attract spiritual activity like a magnet. Some say the Harmonist unknowingly opened a gate here, or a door that couldn't be closed, and once you visit New Harmony, many say it doesn't let you go. New Harmony was meant to be a utopia, but instead it became a prison, and in this town, some spirits are still serving their life sentence. Corbin and Barberville, Kentucky. The Appalachian Mountains are hiding something strange. Deep in the Appalachian foothills of Kentucky, there's a stretch of land where locals refuse to go after dark. Some say it's just superstition, old mountain tales meant to scare kids. But others know better, because along the quiet backroads between Corbin and Barberville, there's a dark history of vanishings, strange lights, and something else watching from the tree line. And once you hear what's happening on Booger Mountain and Devil's Creek, you'll understand why people don't talk about it out loud. In Appalachian folklore, the word booger doesn't mean something silly. It's an old term, passed down through generations, used to describe a monster, a ghost, or some kind of malevolent spirit. And in this part of Kentucky, there are two places where that word carries serious weight: Booger Mountain and Devil's Creek. Both sites are tied to chilling local legends, and even modern sightings. Together, they form one of the most terrifying stretches of haunted land in Appalachia. Booger Mountain sits just outside of Corbin, Kentucky, between it and Barberville. It is not marked on most maps, but locals know exactly where it is. For decades, people have told stories about strange creatures roaming its slopes. Tall, shadowy figures with glowing eyes that follow hikers through the woods. Some describe them as boogers, not quite human, not quite animal, but something in between. There are also reports of strange lights hovering above the mountain at night, sometimes moving through the trees, other times darting across the sky. And let's not forget about the phantom hitchhikers and the phantom truckers that disappear when they get too close. One terrifying encounter from the 1970s describes a group of terrified teenagers camping at the base of Booger Mountain. They claim to have heard heavy footsteps circling their campsite, along with deep guttural breathing just beyond the tree line. When one of them shined a flashlight toward the sound, they saw a pair of glowing red eyes staring back at them, at eye level with all of the adults. The kids bolted back to town, but according to their families, they never spoke of it again. To this day, hikers report hearing disembodied voices calling their names when they pass through the area. About 20 minutes south of Corbin, near Cumberland Falls State Park, sits another place locals like to avoid, Devil's Creek. The name alone is enough to scare people, but the stories tied to this spot are even worse. The creek winds through dense woods, and for generations people have whispered about the spirits that haunt it. Some tell of white ladies, ghostly women in tattered dresses seen weeping by the water's edge, vanishing without a trace. Others report hearing blood-curdling screams through the hollers, followed by sudden unnatural silence. But perhaps the most chilling stories involve those who disappear. Local lore says several hikers and hunters have gone missing near Devil's Creek over the years, some of them later found wandering miles away with no memory of how they got there. One recurring rumor tells of a strange figure called the Watcher, a tall, dark shape that stands perfectly still along the creek bed, always staring at whoever passes by. Multiple reports describe people seeing the same figure just before losing track of time or getting lost in the woods. There's also the Birdman that allegedly swoops down and attacks cars driving through the area. Some believe the hauntings of Booger Mountain and Devil's Creek aren't isolated. They're part of a much larger network of paranormal hotspots connected to the nearby Daniel Boone National Forest, an area already famous for its ghost sightings, cryptid reports, and strange disappearances. The forest spans over 700,000 acres, and much of it remains unexplored. Locals say the same lights seen near Booger Mountain have been spotted deep in the forest, along with similar shadowy figures. Some theorize that these places are all connected by old Native American trails or something far more ancient. And once people start digging into the history of this region, they often stop, because these stories start to sound too close to home. Old newspaper clippings from the Corbin Times-Tribune and the Barberville Mountain Advocate mention unusual sightings going back decades, everything from unexplained fires to strange footprints found near both sites. Some older residents even claim the local churches used to hold booger prayers, ceremonies to ward off evil spirits believed to haunt these hills. And nearly everybody who's grown up around Booger Mountain or Devil's Creek at least knows one person with a story they refuse to share. One local man said he used to joke about the legends until he spent a night fishing at Devil's Creek. He claimed something grabbed him from behind, pulling him toward the water, but when he turned around, there was no one there. After that, he moved out of town, and he won't even drive near the area anymore. In this corner of Appalachia, they don't tell ghost stories for fun. They tell them as warnings, because on Booger Mountain and along Devil's Creek, something's waiting in the dark, and once it finds you, it might not let you go. Before we wrap up, here are 4 honorable mentions, places that didn't quite make the main list, but easily could have. These towns are so unsettling that many people refuse to go near them after dark, and honestly, once you hear these little snippets, you'll understand why. Estes Park, Colorado. This quiet mountain town is famous for one thing, the Stanley Hotel. This is the hotel that inspired Stephen King's The Shining, and the real thing is just as terrifying as the movie. Guests report hearing children laughing in empty hallways, pianos playing by themselves, and seeing ghostly figures of former employees wandering the grounds. Some even say the spirits here follow you home. And yes, they rent out the most haunted rooms to people still. Side note, this is where the Estes method was invented by Connor Randall and Carl Pfeiffer. Port Town, Washington. This Victorian seaport town is often described as a living ghost town. Its streets are lined with beautifully preserved 1800s buildings, but beneath the charm lies a dark past. Locals tell stories of haunted tunnels beneath the town where sailors and workers vanished without a trace. Many of the old hotels here are rumored to be packed with spirits, most famously the Palace Hotel, where guests report seeing a woman staring out from the windows. Rooms that hadn't been occupied in decades. And then there's Deadwood, South Dakota, a place my grandpa visited and said was horrifically haunted. This old west town was home to gunslingers, gamblers, outlaws, and many of them never left. Saloon number 10 is where Wild Bill Hickok was shot, and visitors still report seeing his ghost sitting alone at the bar. There are also stories of shadowy figures wandering the old streets and sudden burst of phantom gunfire in the night. Deadwood thrives on its spooky reputations, but even locals admit it's not just a tourist gimmick. Finally, there's Cairo, Illinois. Unlike the others on this list, this one comes with a serious warning. Cairo was once a bustling port town, but decades of crime, corruption, and decline left it abandoned. Today it's often described as one of the most creepiest places in America. Many of the buildings here are collapsing, streets are overgrown, and there's this heavy, suffocating feeling that hits you the moment you arrive. People report hearing whispers in empty houses and seeing shadowy figures in the windows. But here's the thing, locals and law enforcement strongly advise against visiting, because while the town itself feels haunted, it's also known for real-world dangers, including crime and people who don't want visitors poking around. So when you think you're chasing a ghost and it turns out to be a crackhead, just know I gave you a heads up. So whether it's a haunted hotel, an old west town, or an abandoned city swallowed by darkness, each of these places proves one thing. Sometimes the scariest locations aren't hidden out in the woods, they're hiding in plain sights. You know, haunted towns aren't just about ghosts, they're about stories. They're about forgotten lives and the strange, lingering energy that people leave behind. Because every building, every street, every shadow, they all have a story, and sometimes those stories refuse to be forgotten. Now, I want to hear your stories. Which one of these towns would you dare to visit? Which one of these should I go visit and try to make a video at? Would you spend the night in one of these haunted hotels? Or maybe you've been to one of these places. If you've got a local haunted town near you or creepy hometown legends, share it in the comments down below. I read every single one, or you can even email me your stories. My email should be linked in my bio. If you enjoyed this video and you want more creepy towns, haunted locations, and terrifying true stories, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss anything. Hit that like button, it really helps these stories reach more people, and when you're ready for your next scare, I should hopefully have a haunted towns playlist created with other people's videos that you might enjoy. Until next time, be careful where you go, because some places don't let you leave. I love you all. Bye.